As we all know, about 66 million years ago, our planet was struck by a large asteroid, which resulted in the extinction of the dinosaurs. But what if this asteroid had been even bigger, or perhaps an actual supervolcano had erupted during this time? Well, today we are going to do just that. We're going to take a look at one of the world's largest supervolcanoes and find out if it could have wiped out the dinosaurs. But before we take a look at this supervolcano, I'd like you to take a second to subscribe because it really does help me out, and I've got some amazing maps for you later in the video. Anyway, let's take a look. So when it comes to supervolcanoes, there is nowhere more synonymous with supervolcanoes than the United States. The Yellowstone supervolcano is located in the northwest corner of the country and is the site of 3 major eruptions over the past 2 million years. These eruptions are so big that they are known as supereruptions. A supereruption is defined as an explosive eruption with a volcanic explosivity index, or the VE of 8. This is the second highest rating possible. Only 7 is higher. For reference, the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens had a VE of 5. The eruption of Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines in 1991 had a VE of 6. The largest recent eruption prior to 2020 was that of Mount Unzen in Japan in 1991. It had a VE of 7, and the largest eruption in recorded human history. The 1815 eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia also had a VE of 7. So as you can see, a VE of 8 is very extreme. The first, and by far the oldest known supereruption from Yellowstone, occurred 2.1 million years ago. It was estimated to have had a VE of 8 and 1,000 cubic kilometers of material was ejected during the eruption. The second eruption is believed to have occurred around 1.3 million years ago. Once again, it was a VE of 8, and it ejected 2,500 cubic kilometers of material. The third and most recent supereruption was much smaller than the other two, and occurred about 640,000 years ago. It had a VE of 8, and ejected only 500 cubic kilometers of material. But what if the third eruption had been larger? What if instead of 640,000 years ago, it had occurred 66 million years ago? Would it have wiped out the dinosaurs? Before we continue, I wanted to say thank you to a user for bringing this idea to my attention. Ask me in a comment if I could do this, and if you guys have any ideas of something that I could do, feel free to leave them in the comment section below, and I will get back to you. Also, if you're interested in seeing your name on the screen, then consider supporting me. Anyway, let's continue. Now you may be wondering why 66 million years ago. This was the time that the asteroid impact that killed off the dinosaurs occurred, so this would be a fun little experiment. No. While it's believed that the asteroid impact was the main reason for the extinction of the dinosaurs, some scientists believe that it wasn't the asteroid impact at all, but the effects of the impact. For example, the impact would have kicked up so much dust into the atmosphere that sunlight would not have been able to reach the Earth's surface, causing a nuclear winter type effect. This would have caused temperatures to plummet and would have disrupted the food chain, leading ultimately to the extinction of many species, including the dinosaurs. So maybe this supereruption would have been the asteroid impact that caused the extinction of the dinosaurs. So let's take a look at the top geographies to start off. Number 10 is the United Kingdom. Now I'm sure you didn't expect this one, but hear me out. Yes, the UK would have been covered in ash, but the effects of this supereruption wouldn't have been as bad as the other ones we have on this list. See, the UK was actually quite lucky when it came to the asteroid impact. The impact happened in Mexico, but the effects of it weren't nearly as bad as they were in the United States, Canada, Europe, India, and Eastern Asia. The United Kingdom would have felt some effects from the explosion itself, but compared to the other countries on this list, it would have been minimal. However, the UK would have been hit with a lot of ash from the eruption, so they would have experienced the same nuclear winter-type effect that the rest of the world would have. In the end, though, the UK probably would have been fine. Maybe some livestock would have died, but overall they would have made it through this. No, 9 is Russia. This one should be no-brainer. You see, Russia is so large that it spans across 11 time zones. That means that the majority of the country would have been spared from the initial blast. The closest point of the impact to Russia would have been Siberia. Even so, it would have been hundreds, if not thousands of miles away from the impact site. Now, it is worth noting that the Russian Far East is closer to the impact site, but even so, it still would have been miles away. Because of this, the initial blast probably wouldn't have affected Russia much at all. Russia would have felt some effects from the ash, but again, these would have been minimal compared to the other countries on this list. Number 8 is Australia. Similar to Russia, Australia is very far away from the impact site. The closest point of the impact to Australia would have been Indonesia. So we're talking about thousands of miles away. So the initial blast probably wouldn't have affected Australia at all. However, Australia would have received a decent amount of ash. Now, Australia is such a unique place when it comes to their animals and plants. Many of the plant and animal species found in Australia are endemic, meaning that they are not found anywhere else in the world. This makes Australia one of the most unique places on Earth when it comes to biodiversity. If Australia had been hit hard by the asteroid, it's likely that many of these endemic species would have gone extinct. Luckily for Australia, though, the effects of the asteroid would have been minimal. It would have received a decent amount of ash, but not enough to cause mass extinctions. Number 7 is Greenland. This one might be surprising to you, but bear with me. Yes, Greenland would have received some ash, but it would have been nothing compared to what the rest of the world would have received. This is because Greenland was so far north. Most of the ash would have stayed over land and headed towards Europe, the United Kingdom, and Russia. And as we mentioned, those countries would have been pretty much fine. As for Greenland, they would have just gotten a light dusting of ash. Number 6 is South Africa. South Africa is very similar to Australia. It's very far away from the impact site, and it's also very far away from the Yellowstone supervolcano. In fact, the closest point of the impact to South Africa would have been Madagascar. So we're talking about thousands of miles away. So the initial blast probably wouldn't have affected South Africa at all. However, South Africa would have received a decent amount of ash. Like Australia, South Africa has many endemic plant and animal species. This means that if the ash had hit South Africa hard, it could have caused a mass extinction. Luckily for South Africa, though, the ash would have missed the country entirely. Number 5 is Antarctica. Antarctica wasn't always an ice cube. Prior to 34 million years ago, it was a lot warmer, and it was also a lot drier. During this time, it was also a lot lower. So if the asteroid had hit Antarctica, it probably would have survived okay. It's unlikely that the asteroid would have wiped out all life on Antarctica. However, it's possible that it could have caused some serious damage to the ecosystem. The real effects of the asteroid impact on Antarctica wouldn't have been felt until the ash started falling. First, Antarctica probably wouldn't have noticed any major changes. The temperature would have risen slightly, but it wouldn't have been enough to cause any major problems. However, as the ash started to fall, things would have started to go downhill quickly. Eventually, the entire continent would have been buried in ash, and the average global temperature would have dropped by 18 degrees Celsius. This would have caused massive extinctions of plants and animals worldwide. No. 4 is Egypt. Egypt was home to some of the most iconic ancient structures ever built, including the Great Pyramid of Giza and the Sphinx. But what if it hadn't been home to these structures? What if it had been home to dinosaurs? Well, if it had, it's unlikely that the asteroid would have wiped them out. The asteroid would have caused some serious damage, that's for sure. But it's unlikely that it would have wiped them out completely.
Oh.
The real effects of the asteroid would have been felt after the initial impact. See, the asteroid would have left behind a massive crater, but it would have also left behind a lot of ash. This ash would have blocked out the sun and caused temperatures to plummet. This would have caused food chains to collapse and would have eventually led to the extinction of many species, including possibly the dinosaurs. No. 3 is Chile. If you've watched my channel for long enough, then you know how much I love Chile. It's one of my favorite countries in the world, and I hope to visit one day. But what if I had visited the day the asteroid struck? Well, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed my visit much. The asteroid impact would have caused massive earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions. All along the coast of Chile, entire cities would have been wiped off the map in a matter of seconds. The air would have been filled with debris, and the ground would have been shaking so violently that it would have been impossible to stand up straight. The tsunami would have reached heights of up to 300 feet and would have traveled thousands of miles inland. Buildings would have been leveled, and entire forests would have been uprooted. Dust would have blocked out the sun, and temperatures would have plummeted. Food chains would have collapsed, and many species would have gone extinct. No. 2 is China. China is the 3rd largest country in the world. But what if it had been the 3rd largest dinosaur habitat in the world? Well, if it had, the asteroid would have had no trouble wiping them out. In fact, it would have been one of the easiest places to wipe them out. The asteroid would have left behind a massive crater, but it would have also left behind a lot of ash. This ash would have blocked out the sun and caused temperatures to plummet. This would have caused food chains to collapse and would have eventually led to the extinction of many species, including the dinosaurs. All right, before we get to know. 1. Don't forget to check out the links in the description below. We have some great maps from Yellowstone National Park as well as the impact site. They make great gifts for the Yellowstone National Park and geology lovers in your life. Also, if you want to see more videos like this one, then please consider supporting me. All right, on to number 1, and no. 1 is the United States. Obviously, the United States was hit by the asteroid. But what if instead of being hit by the asteroid, the United States had been hit by the Yellowstone super eruption? Well, the United States would not have stood a chance. The initial blast would have wiped out everything within a 500-mile radius. Cities like Idaho Falls, Jackson, and Salt Lake City would have been wiped off the map in an instant. The air would have been filled with debris, and the ground would have been shaking violently. But this is where the real damage would begin. The super eruption would have thrown so much ash into the air that it would have blocked out the sun and caused temperatures to plummet. This would have caused food chains to collapse and would have eventually led to the extinction of many species. It's not only that, but the ash would have traveled thousands of miles, covering the entire United States in a layer of ash. Crops would have been destroyed and water supplies would have been contaminated. The United States would have been completely devastated. So there you have it. If the Yellowstone supervolcano had erupted 66 million years ago, it's likely that the dinosaurs would have been wiped out. But what do you think? Would the dinosaurs have survived, or would they have met their match against the Yellowstone supervolcano? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to watch another one of my videos, click on one of the 2 videos that you see on the screen now. Thanks for watching. See you next time.